Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today for our webinar titled Staying on Top of Threats and Mitigating Attacks with SIEM. My name is Siddharth, and I work as a product specialist for the IT security solutions at Managed Engine, and it is my pleasure to have you all here today for our webinar. Thank you so much for taking time off from your busy schedules. So don't worry, I will keep my webinar short and crisp, and hopefully you would have a good takeaway at the end of it. At this point, I just want to make sure that you have no difficulties in viewing my shared screen, that is my presentation, and you're also having no glitches with the audio. So I'll just take a pause for about 30 seconds, and in case you have any difficulties, please let us know in the live chat and we'll try to resolve them right away. Right, so I hope everything is all right. So today we've chosen a really hot topic for the webinar. And if you ask me, security has become like the most important field in IT. And with new technologies emerging, you're going to have a whole new bunch of security challenges. And I'm sure as administrators, I think you'll all agree with me on this. I think you'll also agree with me that the size of your organization doesn't matter that much for facing threats, meaning the size of your organization doesn't really matter for being vulnerable to attacks. And attacks can happen to organizations of any size. It's not that the attackers are just targeting the big firms. And when the attacks do happen, the blame usually falls on the administrators. So you, the people, the administrators, have a really challenging job. And the issue is that breaches can go beyond just the cost of the data loss, meaning you face the bigger issue of a loss of trust with the customers than just the heavy financial penalties. So it is no surprise then that today's businesses are starting to understand the need for having cutting-edge security products in order to secure their organization. And I often say this in my workshops and webinars that preventive security solutions alone aren't going to help you fight all these threats. You might have like the cutting edge firewalls and the state-of-the-art IDS systems, but that alone isn't going to be enough. And so a special solution, an SIEM solution, is a must-have for any security operations center, and I will be showing you shortly as to why it is needed for you. So let's get right to it. And you can see on this slide a few examples of common security attacks that you might have probably faced already, or definitely you must be wary of all of these attacks, right? So the first one, you've got DOS attacks. DOS, or denial of service, which is very prevalent today, where the attacker tries to use different techniques like maybe SYN floods and looks to cause downtime for your users. And this is a major problem because it has affected many big companies even. And if you encounter this attack, it is going to take a big hit on your business's productivity. And the onus, as always, is going to be on the IT team to fix things. So just imagine, right, for instance, if thousands of users who access your website daily for business don't get access to the site, right? That's going to take a big hit on your company's productivity. And the biggest challenge with DOS attacks or any other network attacks for that matter is that they all don't follow the exact same pattern, right? Because if that were the case, then we would have eliminated all of them by now. And when I say attack patterns, I mean, for example, you might have heard of brute force attacks, right? So you can actually keep tabs on any potential brute force attacks by tracking suspicious authentication activity in your network. Like repeated fail logons in a short period of time. So each of these attacks can sort of be associated with a certain bunch of events or an attack pattern, which is how they typically take place. Although can be a little unpredictable at times. And that was just one of the attacks. And then you've got SQL injection attacks, which are actually very commonly faced by websites where the attacker looks to exploit a vulnerability in your SQL in order to execute commands, or rather inject code into your SQL to modify data in your database. And think about the repercussions of someone gaining access to, say, your confidential financial information, or being able to modify transactions on your website. They can actually gain complete control even of your database by escalating privileges, which is obviously really frightening and something that you want to keep tabs on and track. What I'm trying to say is that since you know your web servers are prone to such SQL injection attacks, you need to audit them, right? So that was another example. And then you've got things like malware, or even worse, ransomware, which is where without a person's knowledge, a malicious software gets installed in the system. And in case of ransomware, it could block the system access. And as the name suggests, you need to pay ransom money in order to be able to access your own computer. So again, here as a security administrator, you would want to track things like installed software by users all across your organization, and try to detect the malware in this manner. These are just a few examples which I picked because I'm sure instantly you might have heard of this, like, oh yeah, I faced this problem, or I'm very concerned about it. Because these dangers, you might be on the lookout for these on a daily basis, and you obviously wouldn't want this to happen in your organization at any cost. But the real question is, how are the attackers able to do this, right? How are they able to carry out these attacks and so many other attacks also? So what attackers try to do is basically try to exploit vulnerabilities in your network, and they target these vulnerabilities to carry out the attack. So here we can take the first step as security administrators for attack prevention by analyzing log data from your vulnerability scanners. You might be using something like Nessus or Qualys or OpenVAS or Nmap, and you can detect vulnerabilities such as the vulnerable ports, the devices, and other vulnerable services. And these vulnerabilities are what attackers are going to be looking at, right? They're going to be looking at these vulnerabilities to exploit them in order to carry out the attack. And by detecting and fixing such vulnerabilities in your network, you are already taking steps to fight the attackers. So here is where SIEM first starts to come in helping you identify and fix vulnerabilities. Now, as administrators, you know how powerful your log data is, right? Because your device logs contain all the information about a particular event. So let us see what we can do with all this log data. Because the thing is, everything that happens in your network will be logged. And even if an attacker tries to escape being caught by the logs, by trying to shut down the logging service, that itself can be logged. So the data is there in the logs, and you want to extract meaningful information out of it. So I gave the vulnerability analysis as an introduction to SIEM, and it's sort of like the first preemptive step you can take in securing your organization. But how are we going to stay on top of threats and mitigate the security attacks like the ones that we saw on the previous slide, right? How can we do that? And continuous monitoring of your logs is the answer to this. For example, SQL injection attacks, which are obviously a big concern. Did you know that you can detect the attack by analyzing the executed queries, right? And where would you go for this data, right? Where would you go to find out the executed queries? And the answer to that is your SQL logs, of course. So in a sense, from the log data, you can identify or pick out the attack and immediately know that you're facing a threat, and you can quickly look to mitigate the attack just from the log data. And to achieve this, you essentially have to do two things, right? You want to make the most of your logs. To do that, you need to do two things. The first is to configure the device, whether it's your workstation or your network device, your domain controller or application, whatever it is, you need to configure the device to generate logs for the desired security or events of interest. That is because by default, logging services would not be turned on. So you need to specify to the system on what are the events for which you would like it to generate log data for. And once you do that, the second step is to collect all these logs from all your different devices into a central tool, which is of course your SIEM solution. So you've got to do these two things here. So that is where SIEM starts to come in. You're going to first enable your devices to generate log data for the events that you want to track. And then you're going to sort of consolidate all of this log data from all across your network, thousands and thousands of log data, into your SIEM solution for it to be analyzed. Before I continue talking more about SIEM, I want to tell you at this point that internal threats matter too, right? Because when we normally think of threats, we will think of external threats. We think of, okay, there is someone outside my organization who's trying to cause a network breach, who's trying to hack one of my servers. And normally when we talk about attacks, our mind automatically starts to think of something external. But the truth is, insider attacks are on the rise. They have been increasing year on year, and they are causing a huge amount of financial loss for companies. In fact, I saw this really cool infographic by DTech Systems that talked about the cost of insider attacks in the year 2016, right? Internal attacks are on the rise, and they are costing businesses increasingly large sums of money. And in that little infographic, they basically categorized insider attacks into three types. You've got, for example, you've got your malicious insiders, then you've got your naive insiders, and you've got credential thefts. So you've got basically three major heads which are causing insider threats, and this is causing increasingly large sums of money to organizations. And the worst part about this is that it takes time to detect. It can take months. In fact, more than 30% of the attacks, insider attacks, took more than 2 months for them to be even discovered. So just imagine in your organization, if you realize today that an attack happened 2 months ago in your organization, just think about how terrifying that is. So I just wanted to mention this thing about internal threats too, because when we look at SIEM, when we look at threat mitigation, this is a very important component that is often left behind. In the hurry and bid to fight external threats, we often forget internal threats, which can be just as dangerous and just as important to track. Right, so now that I mentioned that, what is SIEM, right? It has become quite popular now, and it stands for Security Information and Event Management. And broadly speaking, it involves the real-time analysis of the events happening across your network, and log management is at the heart of it. Let's not be too concerned with what exactly SIEM is and look at a textbook definition for it, because to be fair, it's not exactly something that is very well defined. It is something that is new, and it's something that's evolving. And the scope of SIEM is so vast that we can't really contain it to a very specific one-line definition. So let us look at more on what it can do for you, right? In my view, it can do two things for you, as in there are two functions an SIEM can do for you. The first is the auditing side of it, where you get a bunch of reports in order to perform a thorough audit of all the events happening in your network. Now, this, of course, is going to be very important when you have to furnish compliance reports in order to stay compliant with regulatory mandates. Now, the second side of SIEM is the threat mitigation, which is now becoming the primary reason for deployments. Because initially, when the whole idea of log management and SIEM started to become a thing, most organizations were looking at it as a tool to stay compliant. Like they wanted to have an SIEM solution so that they could get the compliance reports, stay compliant, meet the compliance mandates, and not pay heavy fines. But increasingly, there is a huge awareness of the security threats, and security has become the most important thing in any IT infrastructure. So threat mitigation is what SIEM's main purpose is becoming today, because it can help you quickly detect attacks at an early stage and help you combat them. And how it does that is the little flow diagram that you see right here. You're going to first try to correlate events. You're going to be alerted. You're going to archive the logs so that in the future you can carry out a forensic analysis if needed. So that is broadly speaking the SIEM process for mitigating threats. And we just look into each of these steps in a little bit of detail. Right. So with that in mind, the first step is correlation of events, right? Real-time event correlation. Now, you know how powerful your log data is, but the thing is, different devices have different logging formats, and they're going to log different things. What I mean by that is if you take a particular security event or an incident, different devices might be part of that particular thing, but each of them are going to have different types of data in their logs for the same event. Because firewalls might be concerned with one particular thing, your routers might be concerned with one particular thing, your IDS might be concerned with one particular thing, and each of them are going to log the event that is specific to what concerns them. And each of them, of course, are going to have different. So my point is, each of them are going to have different sort of data in their logs, and you need to be able to collect all these different kind of data and make sense out of it. So when we discuss correlation, what I mean is correlating different events happening across your network and sort of building an associative relationship between all of these events. Now, many of these events by themselves might not be a cause of concern for you. For example, just a failed logon might well be a routine event unless you have some context, or rather what event happened after that failed logon. Or any other event for that matter might well be routine events, meaning by itself, a single event might not make much sense to you. But sometimes, like I said, when some of these events happen together, usually within a short time frame, it could well mean that your network is under threat and possibly under a security attack. Now, given the massive size of log data that you deal with, and like I told you, each of this log data is going to be logging different kinds of things, right, that you need to make sense out of. You are going to be having several seemingly abnormal individual events on a daily basis, which might actually not be of any security concern. So SIEM correlation is part of the artificial ignorance system that you can get in order to learn only about security events that interest you, right? So obviously you can't waste several precious hours in a day looking at each of these events individually from the different log sources, the different types of log data, and most of this wouldn't really concern you. So trying to manually scan these events without an automated correlation system and trying to figure out things in your network is obviously not practical, and it's possibly impossible actually. So the correlation engine of your SIEM tool can help you to instantly identify anomalous behavior which concerns your network security directly. And in this way, your SIEM solution can analyze a suspicious chain of events, right? You can see these different actions here, action 1, 2, 3, 4. And detecting the attack pattern at an early stage means you can proactively deal with the security threats. So the correlation engine is needed in order to quickly respond to incidents and ignore the events which are false positives. So let's look at a couple of simple use cases to illustrate this. And this right here on the screen you have is how typically password attacks occur, right? the attacker tries to create a backdoor account in order to carry out the attack. Now, in such cases, you might be having multiple logon failures on your critical resource, right? And obviously, logon failures are something that you'd want to track because it could well mean that someone is trying to use maybe a brute force technique in order to crack a password. Following these multiple logon failures on your critical resource, you might have one successful event, a logon success on the critical resource. Now, if it was just one single logon success on the critical resource, it might just be a normal logon success and you wouldn't think that anything suspicious is going on. Now, once these two events happen, if you have a privileged user account creation, it immediately means that someone is trying to create a backdoor account. Privileged user account creations, of course, are something that you as an administrator would want to track, but independently by itself, it might not be a concern for your security. But say all these events happen together, right? Multiple logon failures on the critical resource, followed by a logon success on the critical resource, followed by a privileged user account creation. This could well mean, and if all this happens within a short period of time, this could well mean that someone has created a backdoor account and is trying to carry out an attack in your network. My point again is that individually these events might not seem to be a security concern, but with the intelligence provided by the correlation engine of your SIEM solution, you can instantly detect suspicious activity, which is basically the basis for efficient threat mitigation, right? So let me show you another example to illustrate this. So you might have a bunch of known malicious IP addresses globally, which you know are malicious. So obviously you wouldn't want them to be entering your network. Now, malicious IPs, if you know them, well and good because your firewall can deny them. And repeated denied connections again is something that you might want to track because if someone is repeatedly being denied access by your firewall, it could well mean that they're trying to carry out an attack and are failing, but they might suddenly be able to succeed, in which case the firewall is going to allow traffic and then you have a problem like that. So what you see here in this chain of events is basically a malicious IP address trying to access, say, some critical server on your network, and it gets denied access repeatedly by a firewall. But because someone modified a rule to your firewall, it could well be an insider threat where someone inside your organization colluded with someone outside, and they modified a rule in the firewall to allow the access of someone who's not supposed to access your critical server. And once that happens, the attacker can do a bunch of things. Maybe he can look to install a piece of malware in your network, or he might try to escalate privileges for a user account, and then once the privileges are escalated, he can change critical configurations in your organization's network. So all these chain of events, it's going to be a real challenge to track all of this unless you've got a correlation engine, because your correlation engine is always on the lookout in real time to check whether following a particular event, say following a bunch of denied connections, if a rule was modified and then the same IP address which was denied connection was allowed the connection, this can be done in real time, and your SIEM correlation engine constantly sort of prowls your network in order to identify such patterns and detect attacks in as soon as possible. Like in near real time, this can be done. And this is where also something called threat intelligence of SIEM, which is another must-have feature, comes into play here in order to mitigate threats. So if you can integrate your SIEM solution with a threat feed, then you have the access to the global list of blacklisted IP addresses, because traffic coming in from the blacklisted IP address is almost certainly going to be an attack. So by integrating your SIEM with threat feeds, you're going to be able to go a long way in taking preemptive steps to mitigate network attacks. So the takeaway from all of this is threat intelligence and correlation can detect or capture the entire flow or the pattern of an attack in real time as it happens, right? As the attack is happening or as the security incident is taking place, the correlation and threat intelligence sort of work hand in hand to detect it. And this kind of correlation can be achieved by building what are known as correlation rules, wherein you can use the SIEM tool to define what are the security events or use cases that you want to look out for. I want to tell you that when you are evaluating an SIEM solution, you must ensure that it has the correlation feature, right? It's a must-have feature for threat mitigation. And the parameter that you're going to be using to evaluate it is the predefined correlation rules. And using the predefined correlation rules, you can build or customize the correlation rule as required by you, because you know your organization's IT better than anyone else. So you can use the predefined correlation rules in order to customize the rule as needed by you. So the basic idea is that your SIEM correlation engine can detect that the specified events in the correlation rule has happened and then alert you. Which brings me to my next slide. Yes, real-time alerting, which in my view is the main purpose of an SIEM, the most important feature. Everything that we're trying to do with SIEM, in securing your network, boils down to real-time alerts. Now, we spoke about some correlation rules and saw some use cases, but the end goal that you're going to be looking for is that you want to be alerted in real time that something suspicious, something potentially an attack is happening right now in your network. So this will allow you to instantly take steps in order to combat the attack. My point is that correlation by itself isn't going to be of much use unless you are going to be alerted when a security event of interest happens. So the alerts can help you instantly identify potential security attacks, right? And think about how far this can go in securing your organization. When you're instantly able to correlate events and be alerted upon a suspicious chain of correlated events, think about how far that can go in securing your organization's network. Now you can receive these alerts via SMS or email so that you can quickly take steps to curb the attack. Or with SIEM, you can go one step further by setting a custom script so that when the alert criteria is met, the program that you have set will get triggered and you can proactively mitigate the attack, right? So you can choose in which way you would like to be alerted depending on the severity of the event. Maybe an email notification would do, maybe you would want an SMS notification like when you're on the go, or you can also look at running a script upon the alert being triggered so that you can sit back and proactively mitigate the threat using the SIEM solution. And with alerting, the configuration of alerts, that is the setting up of the alert criteria, is the most important. Now, like I said with correlation, you know your organization's IT infrastructure better than anyone else, and so you must customize the alert, the alert criteria rather, so that you can get the alerts for the events that concern you. And with regards to evaluation, if you're evaluating an SIEM portfolio, you need to look at the one which has a bunch of predefined alerts, which are essentially alerts associated for reports provided by the tool. And in addition to having a comprehensive set of predefined alerts for the common security use cases, you must have the option to customize the alert criteria and create your own alert rules. So you basically want to have a lot of predefined alerts provided by the SIEM solution for common security use cases, and you must also be able to create your own custom alert rules. And it's also very important to tweak the alert criteria, right? As in, once you've configured the alert criteria for the event that you want to be alerted for, or a specific set of events that you want to be alerted for, you need to tweak it. And you can do two things here. You can set a threshold for the alert to be triggered, meaning how many times the particular event should occur within how many minutes. You can set that up in your alert configuration. So like when we looked at the example of the password attacks, you can set an alert rule that alerts you if there are, say, 20 failed logons within 1 minute, because that is abnormal. I don't think anyone is going to type out their password wrong 20 times. So that is one thing that you can tweak in your alert criteria. You can change or set the threshold for the particular event, how many times it occurs within what time frame. And the second thing you can do is you can configure the working hours or the business hours settings. So here what you can do is maybe you might be concerned if someone is logging on to a critical server during the non-business hours. So you can set the alert to be triggered only during the non-business hours. So maybe someone logging in as an administrator to your database might be all right during the business hours because he might be doing some work. But if someone is trying to carry out an attack, they might be trying to do it during the non-working hours, which is where you can use the alert criteria to say that you want to be alerted during, say, after 9 p.m. in the night, which is probably the non-working hours in your organization. So in this way, by configuring the threshold for the alert and for setting your working hour settings, you can reduce the alert noise and stay alerted for exactly what you need. Because you don't want your inbox flooded with 100 logon alerts which is really not helpful for you, because you really can't figure out what exactly happened. You want alerts specifically only when something suspicious happens. You want alerts specifically only for the security events of interest that you want to track. So for that, that's why I wanted to mention that you have to look at threshold configuration, and you got to look at configuring the working hour settings in your SIEM alert profiles. So coming to my final bit of my presentation, I want to talk a bit about forensics and what is called backtracking of security attacks. Now, you might be thinking, fair enough, that, hey, didn't you just tell me we can prevent all of these security attacks with real-time event correlation and alerting? Well, not quite actually, because, I mean, yes, real-time event correlation and alerting goes a long way in securing your network, way better than not having a SIEM portfolio. But in case something goes wrong, you want to be empowered to investigate the security incidents, and you want to try and limit or, say, ensure the damage control in case you do encounter a security attack. And there is proof for this, because if we had everything figured out with IT security, then you wouldn't be hearing of attacks and breaches. Whereas that's not the case. Anytime you go to some tech website or an IT website, you're going to hear a lot about some network breach that happened yesterday, or some major data loss that a bank faced, for example. So what you can do with SIEM is you can first look at the preemptive steps, where we look at real-time correlation and alerting. You can look at the second thing is the auditing side of it, where you've got a bunch of reports which allow you to track all the events that you need and sort of conduct a thorough audit. And the third thing is what we are looking at in this slide, which is the log search and forensics. You know that you have all the logs in your solution. So here the feature of log search enables you to drill down millions of log messages to just a few that concern you in a given scenario. And in this way, you will be able to conduct a thorough forensic investigation, right? Log search, like any search engine, basically would help you to drill down from millions of collected logs in your database to the one or the few ones that you're looking for in a particular situation. So I can type out search queries like the one you see right here on the screen, like username equals and device equals and the event ID equals, and I can instantly get the data for a specific event that I'm looking for in a given situation. So in this way, if I do encounter any security incident or attack, I can use the search feature to search through the collected log data and investigate as to what exactly happened, right? How did the attacker actually manage to carry out the attack? And I can find out the exact sequence of events that occurred by going through the log data. Now in this way, by quickly performing the search and gathering the data, I can quickly tell in case I encounter a security incident, first if it was indeed an attack or just a case of false positive, and of course, if it was an attack, I can quickly take steps to mitigate it. So for example, say I come to know of an indicator of compromise has occurred in my web server. I can quickly jump to the log search and see the IP address that was trying to access my web server, whether it was malicious, where else it hit my network, did my firewall allow access, did my IDS detect a malicious request, and so on. I might have to search for things like this. And this is where the log search enables you to conduct a thorough forensic analysis and backtrack security incidents in order to get a complete picture of the attack. My point is, I need to be able to do all of this very quickly, as in search through all the different device log data in my network, which is why it is important to have a powerful log search engine in your SIEM tool. So to sum up, SIEM or SIM, as some people call it, the SIM portfolio can not only help you take preemptive steps to mitigate attacks, with the real-time event correlation and alerting, but it can also help you conduct a thorough audit of your entire network with its reports. And finally, it can, in case something does go wrong, we hope nothing goes wrong, but in case something goes wrong, it empowers you to conduct a thorough forensic investigation in order to understand what exactly happened, try to stop it and minimize the damage control, and also prevent the same thing from happening again by saving that particular search result as an alert so that the next time the same thing happens, you can be alerted in real time. So it's a constant evolving process, where you're alerting, correlating, auditing, backtracking security incidents. And SIEM empowers you to do all of this. So that was the main idea that I wanted to convey to you on the power of SIEM when it comes to your network security, and why for any security operations center, it is becoming a must-have solution in order to combat threats, which remember can be both external as well as internal. So thank you so much for joining us today. I hope this webinar gave you some useful inputs. I wanted to let you know that we at Manage Engine have a comprehensive SIEM offering called Log360, which is an integration of two of our products, Event Log Analyzer and AD Audit Plus. So Event Log Analyzer basically gives you the external threat mitigation side of it, while AD Audit Plus brings in the Active Directory context and helps you mitigate internal threats. So if you are evaluating an SIEM portfolio in your organization, you can try Log360 or one of its components as required. Right, so if you have any queries or suggestions with today's webinar, you can ask them right away on the live chat and we'll try to answer them. We'll try to answer them right away, we have some time now. And if you have any further queries with SIEM, you can drop me an email, and I'm also giving you Log360's tech support email ID in case you have any questions pertaining to Log360. So you can reach out to us offline as well, and do fill in the feedback and let us know what you liked or didn't like. And if you have any suggestions for future webinars, do let us know and we'll try to organize them as well. So once again, thank you so much for joining us today. We're here to answer any questions that you have on the live chat. So have a great day ahead.